One of the questions I often get asked is about the different kinds of questions you can use. These are questions that enable you to solve problems, understand more about what a customer is looking for, develop an inquiry, manage a conversation, make small talk, all of these things. So let's start at the two basic fundamental questions, types of question if you like, open and closed. Now an open question starts with a phrase such as who, where, what, when, how, and so on. These tend to get factual questions very often and reasonably short, but they can get to the point quite quickly. A closed question on the opposite end of the scale starts with a verb. Do you, can you, will you, does it, and so on. Now these questions often elicit a yes, no, or don't know response. Now when they're used together they work extremely well, so a closed question confirms information that you've gained through an open question. So what you're looking for is that correct? Where a closed question doesn't work very well is if you use it to try and start a conversation. You end up in a cul-de-sac. So the classic example is if you walk into a store, a shop of some kind, and someone comes up to you, a shop assistant, and says, "Can I help you?" Almost the immediate response from most people is, "No thanks, I'm just looking," or "I'm fine." Now that tends to be the end of the conversation. If you structure the question as an open question, what is it you're looking for, or how can I help you, then that's more inviting if you like. But both of these are reasonably transactional questions and not really that effective, not in the true sense of trying to solve a problem or elicit more information. So let's look at the next two types of question. I call them high impact, sometimes known in the literature as high gain questions. These are questions that elicit a subjective answer. They ask people to speculate, to analyze, prioritize, express an opinion. They may start with a phrase or a word such as let's imagine, or what if, or what are the three most important, or what would you like to achieve if it were possible. So these kind of things. And they only really work well if you do a run-on question. So as you ask this question, so you ask somebody, for example, they're going to choose a product, and you say, what's most important to you? What are the key things you want this product to have in terms of features and functions? Now, when they say the first thing that comes into their mind, well, that is just the first thing that comes into their mind. What you need to do now is visualize an iceberg with a lot more stuff, a lot more information, a lot more thinking underneath the surface. So you summarize back. So you're looking for this function, excellent. What else is important to you? What else would you like to have? Can you give me some ideas? What about, how about, and so on. So what you're going to do is help the customer generate better thinking, new ideas, and really add value to the conversation. So at the end of the short interaction, they think, well, I hadn't really thought about it in this way before, or I hadn't thought about it in this much depth. And so you ask these questions. The modern vernacular is to ask what they call disruptive questions. Now these are high impact questions. What would happen if, or if all the items you're looking at are the same price, which one would you choose and why? You know, what about, have you considered so and so? So you're asking a question that may be a little challenging, and that's a good thing. One of the things that stops people being confident in their own decision making is a lack of certainty. So the ability to think things through in more depth using high impact questions is a valuable asset to a customer, whether it's customer service or sales or some other aspect of service and development. Now, the fourth kind of question is one of my favorites. I nickname it my Uncle Ted. And I like to take Uncle Ted to me to all my meetings and all my calls and all my online conferences. Tell me, explain, describe. Now, technically these aren't questions at all, they're statements, but they are responded to really well. So can you tell me a bit more about that? Can you give me some examples or explain how this function works? Or can you explain the process you would go through? Can you describe in more detail? And these three questions, when asked genuinely with high levels of interest and empathy, will elicit a great deal of information. Now I want to finish this short summary of questioning techniques with two very important points. There's no point in asking great questions if you're not going to do really good listening. So become a ferocious listener. Really intently concentrate on what people are saying. Listen to the words and the spaces between the words and the tonality of the words. So when somebody says, well, that would be difficult, what they're telling you is it's possible. So how would that be difficult? Can you just tell me a bit more about what you mean by difficult? So you're going to use this probing. And the second thing to remember, in addition to active listening, is the way you ask the question. So if I turn to a customer and said, so what's most important in choosing your new? That doesn't sound very interesting. It doesn't sound like I really care. So I have to say, so what's really important to you and your family in choosing this? So the phrasing is really important. And sometimes you have to sell the question. And by that, I mean explain why you're asking the question and perhaps the reasons and benefits for you and them in understanding the answer. So, quick summary. Open and closed questions, very transactional. Open are better than closed, but not by much. High impact questions, these are subjective. What if, let's imagine, what's most important in your opinion, how do you feel about? They're kind of better interview questions, and they allow you to run on and get much more information. And finally, tell me, explain, give me an example, describe in more detail. The TED questions, when combined with active listening and true empathetic questioning techniques, will make you a force to be reckoned with when it comes to asking questions.